Hello everyone, I'm Daz and welcome to American Civil War and UK history. I've come to a really cool place, and the first thing Chris said to me when I broached the idea of him coming over here, where would you like to go? And he said, well, I've got a few things that I want to tick off, and one of them is the birthplace of Shakespeare. And we've just been around that, and that is behind us there in the background. So Chris, I want to get your thoughts on what it was like ticking that box and itching that itch and doing something that you've always wanted to do.
This has really been a lifelong bucket list item for me, and so it's just been a huge thrill. I've been super excited as we were driving up here. I'm just all antsy in the car and couldn't wait to get here. In a previous life, before I did history stuff, I did theater and performed a lot of Shakespeare. I've directed Shakespeare. I've read all of Shakespeare, studied it as a master's degree student, and so Shakespeare's been a real strong part of my life for decades, and so I've always wanted to come to his birthplace. I've always wanted to come and walk the streets where he walked, and so to be able to be here today was really the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. I appreciate you doing that for me. It's just spectacular. There's so little we know about Shakespeare. He shows up in records for his baptism. We don't even know the day he was born. We just know that he was baptized on the 26th of April. We see his marriage records. He gets married at 18. His wife's 3 months pregnant. We don't know how they met or any of that. Then he vanishes for almost like 5 years, and then he shows up in London as a playwright. And so to be able to walk the floors that he once walked and be in the house where we finally have some tangible connection to a man we know very little about is really a wonderful way to connect with him. So Darren, I want to ask you, what was your impression of going through the Shakespeare birthplace?
Okay, yeah, so for me it was like more of the social aspect of things, of how people lived and how things were done back then. I'm interested obviously in Shakespeare, it's a cool piece of history, but for me it's more about the way people lived in that period, and also seeing like a house of this age as well and things like that, and the quirky little nooks and crannies that are hidden in the house, and it's just such a beautiful little place to come and visit. So I would say, even if you're not a Shakespeare fan, as a historian, or come and visit this sort of place, because you're going to get that sense of that 16th century vibe.
There were people just like us, and yet they were so different in the way they had to live sometimes. And kind of being in touch with how they live reminds me just how much like us they were.
And again, going back to the house itself, there's some great guides in there as well, that gave you really cool little bits of information, of quirky little things, and what sayings mean, and things like that. I love that sort of thing, those quirky little tiny things that you always think, well, why is it called that? And there were some good things like that going on.
Yeah, like a good example was the bed key that they used to tighten the ropes of the rope beds, that's where the idea of sleeping tight comes from.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and don't let the bed bugs bite. With the there was another thing where she was beating the mattress with this, and just things like that. I love that sort of history, that social aspect of how people lived and what it was like for them back then.
It was a really a literal dream come true to come here. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. And again, just before we wrap up then, so is there anything you want to add there at all?
Just to echo what you said, come here to the Shakespeare birthplace. The trust, which has operated since the mid 1800s, really depends on donations from folks just like you to keep this part of Britain's history alive.
Okay. Anyway then, I'm Daz, Chris Mackowski, American Civil War and UK History. Cheers.